dear friends. I am Dr. Anupama Shekhawat, Assistant Professor at Maheshwari Girls PG College. Apart from all other sessions of mine, today is another interesting session, and this session is about the concept of romanticism in English literature. Some students, they ask me the question, when I talk about the concept of romanticism in literature, they say, "Oh ma'am, is it going to talk about the romance and love?" So what I say is, definitely not. Romanticism literature is not all about love, but then it has many other varied features. I call these features as spectrum, and I have divided them into a beautiful rainbow of 7 points. I am sure these 7 points will definitely help you to understand the concept of romanticism in English literature. So let's go and understand them one by one. I'll try to give examples to demonstrate my concept more better. Here we go. Glorification of nature. Almost all the romantic poets, whether we start from the Harbinger J. Thompson, or we start from Wordsworth, or we talk about Keats, or we talk about Shelley, they all talk about the concept of glorification of nature. They treat the nature as mother goddess. They treat the nature as a power which inspires, and it is very sublime. It is very majestic. For example, in To Autumn by John Keats, wherein he beautifully describes the nature and calls them the friend of sun, the budding friend of sun, who conspires with sun and results into melodious music of evening and juicy, delicious fruits. So this is the love which almost all the romantic poets had for nature. Another second important point, or the second important characteristic of romantic literature, is acceptance of emotions. My dear friends, this concept of acceptance of emotions is very well reflected in one of the very famous novel by Mary Shelley, Frankenstein, in which describes how if we do not accept the emotions which trail within us, it can be disastrous. It tells us, teaches us to accept the emotions which lie deep within us. The second point of the romantic literature is this. The third point of romantic literature is, my dear friends, creativity and imagination. The poets, the writers, the dramatists, they play with their creativity. They write about the view, which really inspires the readers also, and they think, oh wow, this could be another way of looking at things. And the very wonderful example of this is the Preludes written by William Wordsworth, wherein he talks about various concepts which we know, but in an utter creative fashion, in an utter creative mode and manner. So this is the third characteristics of romantic literature, romanticism in literature. Another one is aesthetic beauty. Almost all the romantic poets, or the writers, or the dramatists, they talk about the aesthetic beauty. The beauty which does not comes and motivates us for lust, but the beauty which lurks the subtlety in it, the beauty which has the sublimity in it, the beauty which provokes devotion, spirituality. For example, the best example according to me in this category would be She Walks in Beauty by Lord Byron, wherein he describes the grace of his beloved. So it talks about, when we talk about the romanticism in literature, it talks about varied field. It talks about love for nature, it talks about aesthetic beauty, it talks about acceptance of emotion, it talks about how we can be creative. So I hope up till yet all these points might be clear to you. Here we proceed for the points. Another important point is the theme of solitude. Trust me, my dear friends, almost all the romantic poets, or the writers, or the dramatists, which I keep on repeating again and again, they were very, very pessimistic. At one point of time, or another point of time, they have felt this wave of pessimism traveling within them. And Solitary Reaper by William Wordsworth is wonderful example of this. Every poet, every writer of this period had this pang of solitude. Whether we talk about S.T. Coleridge, we talk about P.B. Shelley, they all were at one point of time very lonely, very dejected, and they thought that world has ended for them. And solitude was very peaceful, contrary to this. So we can say that they had a love for solitude. This is very much reflected in Solitary Reaper, wherein he quotes, the poet William Wordsworth is the writer. He quotes that how beautifully the girl is singing, reaping all by herself. There is nobody in the field to help her. So solitude is another important characteristic of romantic poets and the writers. Another important characteristic is supernatural elements. They were, very much fascinated by the Gothic world of supernaturals like witches, the demons, and one example which really, make the goosebumps come within me also is the Christabel. And in this wonderful poem in verse, the writer talks about, the poet S.T. Coleridge talks about how one girl was taken by a witch demon Christabel, and how the pure blessed spirit of mother liberated Christabel from this witch Geraldine. So very wonderful this poem Christabel, and it is full of supernaturalism, full of awe and the Gothic movements, and there are many of this in this. The another important characteristic is personification. Almost all the romantic poets in this category, because personification is an important parameter, is an important dramatic technique of poetry. So in this category, I would like to quote the poem of P.B. Shelley, wherein he writes about Ode to West Wind, and he personifies West Wind in many ways. Some point of time he calls the West Wind as a ghost rider. So at one point of time he calls the West Wind as a very powerful force which drives all the clouds away, and he also calls the West Wind motivator. The famous lines of the poem is that when winter comes, can spring be fall behind. So when he wants that the West Wind should drive out the dead thoughts within him and create the new ones, so that he can bring the awareness and the wellness into this world. So my dear friends, we have talked about romantic literature. So I hope it's clear that romantic literature is not all about love and romance, but it talks much more beyond that. It talks about, what to talk about is creativity. It talks about glorification of nature. It talks on one hand about the aesthetic beauty. On the other hand, it talks about the supernaturalism. It never misses out the personification and also acceptance of our own emotions. I hope this session would help you to understand the concept of romanticism in literature much more. Thank you so much.